We're live. Hi. Hello.
Not kind of live.
Not
For us,
live.
we're live.
We're live. Well, once you hit record, Jack, it's like anything that we say is technically live. It's not
Yeah,
live, but it
it
technically
is
is
live,
live.
and it can be held against us. You never
Yes.
know.
Once that little red box pops up in the corner, like we are live. We are not live when people are watching or listening, but we are live. Welcome to Unnecessary Roughness, Barstool's college football podcast. Brandon is doing the dozen right now, which is obviously a very important thing. So he is not here, but you know what? Hey, it happens. You've got the big three right here. We've got Jack and Katie, high noon. And I know sometimes when we do ads, people think we make up stories, not just us, just in general at Barstool, like, oh, you guys are just doing this. I had one of my best friends from college FaceTime me over the weekend. And she was FaceTiming me multiple times, which told me she was probably out drinking because usually one
Yeah,
FaceTime is twice. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to answer it just in case it is an emergency. She was asking me what the new pack of High Noon vodka was because she wanted to go try the plum. So I explained to her it's the Snowbird. She goes and finds it, plum and raspberry. And then she calls back much later in the day after she had definitely been drinking to ask about the new tequila pack, which I believe, Katie, is the Fiesta pack, which also
Yeah,
has flavors. We're just
prickly
throwing out
pear.
flavors everywhere.
Yeah, great.
Flavors. So it's like prickly pear for tequila, blood orange for tequila, and then obviously plum and raspberry, the new flavors in the Snowbird pack. I love the plum. I've had both the plum and the raspberry. I know Katie put out a video. The plum is so good. It's in my top 5 for sure. So go get it. High noon. The Super Bowl is on Sunday. What better time than to drink High Noon with your friends, whether you're at a house party or at a bar, get High Noon. Okay, so we did not have an episode last week due to scheduling, also a little bit of a slow period, but a lot of things happening in college football. Kind of, if you're a college football fan, you see all these things happening. You see the headlines, some much bigger than others. Obviously, National Signing Day, which used to be a crazy piece of entertainment, in February. Like, again, I know, like, roll your eyes, like, oh, I used to be a sideline reporter, but I'm telling you, I used to have to be at a campus at like 4:30 in the morning, and I wasn't able to leave until those offices shut at night. You were there all day waiting for literal fax machines to come in. And it's something that we've seen change so quickly. Like, Jack, I know you're a big recruiting guy, and like fax machines were outdated long before they stopped using them on National Signing Day, but it was just still like a staple of National Signing Day. The fact that we look at, even just in our Barstool world, that like Rio was the National Signing Day girl, like not that long ago, to now we're kind of seeing National Signing Day not be that big of a deal. Like, I think it happened so quickly, adding the NIL and the transfer portal and the early signing day, but like this February is so anticlimactic.
I forgot it was National Signing Day yesterday. And December, the early signing day is, I almost want to call it signing day and then late signing day, like, because it's late signing day. There's nothing that really happens. I mean, maybe there's a few recruits that kind of fall through and like want to wait until then. But back in the day, it was everything. And the appointment television that it was is no longer the case.
It's crazy. And we'll talk about what actually happened on National Signing Day later in the show, because as we've mentioned, it's really not that important in comparison to what it used to be. Like, obviously recruiting is and getting guys on your roster, but this day in February isn't. I text a coach of a major college football program just to like see what he said. And I said, am I crazy? But does it feel like National Signing Day is almost completely worthless now? And that's the word I use. And I said, like, it used to be such a big deal, and now it doesn't feel like that. Is that a media thing? And he said 100%. I'm actually on vacation and didn't sign a single guy yesterday or even tried to. And this is a major program. So I'm not saying that every coach is doing that, but the fact that that's like even the thought process, like you build your roster to get NIL or to get transfer portal guys, to get recruits in December. And then once you've done that, you can just take February as a vacation. That's probably not a minority thought process. A lot of coaches just probably wouldn't say it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's fair. I understand why someone would say that, and they wouldn't want to put their name behind it because it's like, obviously, because then it's like, oh man, if you have a few losses and whatnot, then people will bring that up. But I get why that happens. And some teams had some big commitments yesterday, but even even yesterday, I don't even think UConn added anybody. And I bring up UConn because they're a low tier program within the FBS, and so it shows it's not even just the big programs aren't. It's lower tier teams too. They do a lot of their work in December in the transfer portal, and then in April or so, or whenever the portal opens again, there'll be some more moves. But outside of that, I mean, it's kind of a day that is the more people that come in. Like Katie is a relatively new college football fan. She never had fax days, you know. She never
Katie, you would have loved those
the
days.
new college football fans that are like, a lot of fans don't know about the fax days. If the younger you are, the less fax days you remember, and before you know it's going to be like a relic of the past. It's going to be
it might already be.
Yeah,
I truly think that it happened so quickly. It wasn't even like it started to phase out. It's I don't know exactly what year it happened, but it's definitely been since I've been at Barstool, which I was there in 2017. I feel like all of a sudden it's just gone. And Katie, being a newer college football fan, first of all, Katie, as Katie stats, the stats part, you would have loved National Signing Day the way that it used to be, because you were literally sitting, no matter if you're a fan of a specific school or you cover the sport, you were sitting on pins and needles, literally waiting for a fax to come through. And once that fax would come through, then social media gets a hold of it. Then they would run down, especially when I was at A&M and I had more connections in the building. They would run down and tell me, and then I would tell my producer, and then my producer would say, "Hey, SportsCenter, we have news from Texas A&M." That's how crazy that trickle down would be. And now it just doesn't even happen. It's overnight. The fax machine is just gone, which it probably should have been once emails happened. But, I digress. The fax machine was kind of an old relic anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel the signing.
Go ahead, Katie. Sorry.
The new version, I think, is when people have inside sources on Twitter and it's trying to find people who actually do it, actually know it, just trying to Sir Yacht a few years ago, just saying stuff to say stuff, whereas people actually do it. And I think the new trail is who actually knows what they're talking about and who's just trying to pretend like it, because people get duped all the time on Twitter. Obviously not the same thing, but that's the new angst cycle.
Well, especially because you can just get a blue check mark now if you pay for it, which, by the way, I don't even want to get into the politics of that because whatever, but it's so easy to get duped now, because it used to be just a name you maybe didn't pay attention to the check mark. You can just pay whatever it is, $10, $11 a month. You could have 5 followers and you could break college football news, and it's easy to get duped by any of it. So, yeah. And by the way, shout out to the guys. And I know we've all talked about, shout out to the guys at On3, because they've also been they've really moved into the world so quickly too, where they've not been around for very long. Now, obviously Shannon Terry has, but when I see On3 news, I'm that's true. That's a fact. That's coming from legitimate sources. And they've been able to ride the wave of the new signing day in recruiting that a lot of companies are still trying to figure out. But when I see it, I believe that. I have to fact check, is this a real person? Where is it coming from? But you're right, I guess, Katie, the excitement moved from fax machines to, are you a troll or are you a legitimate source? Before we talk about anything else, we have to talk about HelloFresh. As we know, if you listen to this podcast, you watch it, I'm a huge fan of HelloFresh. I had some for lunch earlier. I cooked chicken with green beans and sweet potatoes because it is time for me to get in summer shape. But you know what? Over the holidays, I was making shepherd's pie. I was cooking fillets. HelloFresh has everything. Whether you're trying to eat healthy, whether you're just trying to be better, it makes it so easy because it is all fresh. Hence the name. So if you live in a house, condo, apartment, whatever, it will be delivered to your door. Farm fresh to table. Again, the easiest thing in the world. You could be the worst cook on the planet. This food will taste good. It's step-by-step, idiot-proof, delicious food. You pick your menu every week. You pick your size. If you're trying to be keto, if you're trying to be vegetarian, if you're trying to be fit and wholesome, if you want hearty, it's all there. We love HelloFresh. And right now, breakfast for life. And this is a secret thing, Katie and Jack. I don't know how much you guys love HelloFresh. I know I do a lot. Bless you. They have phenomenal options for quick breakfasts and lunch and even kids meals. If you are a parent listening, they have great like quick kids lunches, but their breakfast items are phenomenal. So if you go to hellofresh.com/walkerfree and use the code walkerfree, you get free breakfast for life, which is one breakfast item per box while subscription is active. And I'm telling you, it is worth it. They've got these little egg bites that a coffee shop, a big coffee shop in the world has them. These are better.
I know. I know what you're talking about.
Yes, they are so good. You put some hot sauce on it. Shout out HelloFresh. So let's just wrap up signing day. I know we said we were going to do it later in the show, but since we're doing this, I really want to talk about Kirk Herbstreit because I feel like that, like when we talk,
it kind of ties in.
It does tie in. I mean, it's obviously like if you don't know what's happened with Kirk Herbstreit is under a ton of fire right now for maybe, and I'm putting this in air quotes because a lot of people are listening, not watching, tampering with Dylan Raiola. We will get to that. We'll get to Nick Saban. We'll get to, Jeff Hafley, which we haven't talked about. We'll get to all of that. But Jack, Brandon and I have always given you shit about recruiting. And the one thing that you've always said that I absolutely agree with is that regardless of how you feel about recruiting, when you look at national championship teams and national championship caliber programs, they always have the 4 and the 5 stars. And ESPN from their like stats and info department put out something that is an obvious statement, but it actually is crazy to look at it. And it's that in the 10 years of the college football playoff era, the way that it has been, 9 of the 10 years, the team has won has an average ranking in the top 10. So it's not like we're seeing, 5 have a top 10 ranking or 3 have a top 10 ranking, 9 of the 10. Do you know which, and this is like a Brandon Walker trivia question, but like, can you think of what team has won the national championship without an average ranking of 10?
And within the top 10?
Yeah.
I would assume Clemson's first year.
No, it was actually Michigan this year because I would have said the same thing. Like when I was looking at it, I was like, what's the average? So, but, and again, it's one of those numbers thing where you're just looking at it like, just make it easier because I'm like Alan in The Hangover trying to look at all these numbers. But if you go and look at that graphic, and Katie, I can send it to you so you can put it out on, I don't know if we boost ESPN's graphics or not, but it's actually cool to see like Alabama in like 2015 or whatever year was like, every single class was the number 1 ranked class in the country. So they're averaging the number 1 class for 4 years, which is wild. Michigan was 12.5 was their average this year, which makes sense because, they obviously had a lot of players that came together and gelled well together to win a national title. But they didn't have those guys jump off the page. But goes back to what you've been saying, Jack. It's like, fine, you can think recruiting's not that big of a deal. I think it's even less important now with the transfer portal. But history speaks for itself. Facts are facts.
Yeah. Even if you were to look at the team talent composite from 24/7, which looks at the actual roster so you could bring up transfer portal and whatnot, Michigan ranks 14th, or they ranked 14th this past year, which is relatively low because, like I'll just go year by year. In 2022, Georgia was 2nd. 2021, Alabama was 1st, Georgia 2nd, Ohio State 3rd. Like, Michigan was probably the lowest in terms of winning the national championship. And then why am I blanking on the 2021 national champion?
Alabama?
No, they won 2020.
Georgia.
Georgia, yeah.
Georgia won 2021 and 2022.
2022. Yeah, sorry.
Alabama was 2020.
Like, you would have to, like, Alabama 2020 ranked 2nd. You keep going back, 2019, even that team that kind of came out of nowhere, LSU ranked 5th. 2018, you keep going back. Like, all the teams that went in this team talent composite were almost top 5 guaranteed. But Michigan was 14th this year. Now, they still met the metric, which is the blue chip ratio, which means of your scholarship players, which is usually 85 or so, you want to have at least 43. You want 43 or more players above the 4-star rating, which is a blue chip, 4 stars and 5 stars. And you want your blue chip ratio to be above 50%. Michigan's was like 56, 57, but that's relatively low. So that goes to show how impressive that win was, and goes to show the coaching and whatnot and the development and that's why a lot of people are a little concerned with not even just Jim Harbaugh leaving, but Jesse Minter and then also the strength coach, because the strength coach leaving is a big deal because the strength coach, you spent a lot of time with him. We all know that. But, what we said, even before Michigan won those national championships against the Ohio States of the world, we always said, like, Michigan just runs through Ohio State, just takes their soul. And like, that's a lot of that comes from, those hours put in the weight room, and maybe the strength coach was a big deal there. That's not to say that Michigan won't be fine, but it is interesting. But if you want a good chance to win a national championship, you need to have a great recruiting. And that's why you can't even like people will make fun of Texas A&M, Tennessee's of the world, Florida's. It's like they're there. Like there's still issues, and but like you're doing, like, if you need to, they're checking the boxes that you need to check, and like it's so you're still like around, like that's why I'll never get on those programs as much as others. I mean, it is fun to make jokes.
And I mean, as somebody who is the butt of one of those jokes for my team, like here's the thing. It's like, whether we're talking about A&M, Tennessee, Auburn, Ohio State, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, like my rebuttal to when people say that is, what do you want teams to do? Say, hey, we're never going to win a national title because you don't think we're going to, so we're just not going to recruit at a high level. Like that to me, like, of course you're going to keep trying. Then it's like, okay, you get these recruits, then who's the coach that's going to put it all together? And that's what all of these schools are chasing. Obviously, Georgia figured that out. Mark Richt always had great recruiting classes, was always winning 10 games. They decide to let him go, and people think it's fucking crazy because Mark Richt won them 10 games, a lot of times. But then they were like, well, let's just go out and get Kirby Smart and see what happens. If Kirby Smart did the opposite of what he's done, then they would be making fun of Georgia the same way that they make fun of other schools. So it's like, it is a very, very fine line to ask of these schools. Now, of course, I'm hoping, my hope as my inner fan is like, all right, we get a guy to actually put it all together. But as far as National Signing Day, the bigger picture is if you can build a roster when the portal opens and you can get these transfers and then you can get the guys in December, February is just kind of like all right, hey, we can sit back and watch this happen. And then when the portal reopens, if you've got some holes, then we'll go back then. Just anticlimactic to me across the board.
Yeah, and then maybe like for some schools and some, like there's players that they're in on. Like there was a guy who committed yesterday. I think he was down the UCLA in Nebraska. Nebraska did most of their work in December. Obviously, Dylan Raiola, and we'll get into that with Herbstreit.
I'm excited about that.
But like there may be like a guy or two that they're really trying it for those last month, or it's more like a month. And maybe they're trying to like they'll stick around. But if you filled all your boxes, you kind of can just take that time to do whatever you want. I mean, yeah, it really depends. It's like maybe get ready for spring ball and whatnot, or keep recruiting the next class. But it's a completely different time. And the fact that all the recruiting ends in the postseason is, I mean, we've had a discussion about the overall schedule of college football many times. And that's one of the weird ones. But yeah, I mean, let's dive into the juiciest topic of today.
Yeah, let's get to it. Also, I just realized that I should probably put this caveat on there just in case, because I don't want to throw my own school in the bus. The coach I was texting is not Mike Elko nor anybody associated with Texas A&M. So Texas A&M was still doing work yesterday on National Signing Day because they actually got a couple big names. But just want to put that on the record. Before we talk about the juicy story of Kirk Herbstreit and Dylan Raiola, Chomps has been with us, I think, only for like a month or so. And I have this in my hand. If you're watching on YouTube, I have an empty wrapper. Now, where I really fucked up was I should have eaten the Chomps on the stream, but I was so hungry that I ate it before. But I have the wrapper. So this one that I ate today is the jalapeno turkey stick. And let me tell you something. It is so good. They've got beef and they've got turkey. Another one I have in my cabinet is the beef taco seasoning flavored one. So we're not just talking about like random normal beef jerky and turkey jerky, which is delicious. Like they actually put some thought into the flavor. And the biggest thing about this jerky is that it's actually really, really healthy. So it has a ton of protein in it. So it has 12 grams of protein, 80 calories, 0 sugar, which is a huge thing. So it's a very easy thing to just grab on the go when you need protein, which we all do. And it's all natural ingredients. So if you're a beef jerky fan, like this actually tastes really good too. Because that's another thing. Like when I first saw these, I was like, well, I'm going to love them because they're a sponsor of the podcast. I love them enough. And I actually bought this with the UR code because they sent me some and I went through them. So I was like, I feel like I can't ask. So go to chomps.com/Walker and you get 20% off your first order with free shipping. So it's delivered straight to your door. It came very, very quickly. Like I got them within a few days. And again, they have all these different flavors. The website is very easy to use, which I know sometimes is crazy to say in 2024, but you can go in, you can select how many you want, what your flavors are. And there's, I think 9 or 10 delicious, delicious flavors. And again, it's the easiest way to get your protein and they actually taste good. It's not the healthy food that tastes like chalk. It actually tastes good. So go to chomps.com/Walker, see all the delicious flavors and get 20% off your first order and free shipping. That's chomps, CHOMPS.com/Walker. And do not forget to use our link so they will know that we sent you. And it's actually really cute. Katie, Jack, I don't know if you've gone to the website. When you click on our URL, it says something like welcome unnecessary roughness listeners, which I think is very cute. I think it's a nice little touch by Chomps. So we love Chomps. Okay, so juicy story here. And there's so many different ways that we can go with this. And I want to get y'all's opinion on it. I have a very strong opinion on it. So a little bit of background. We obviously know Dylan Raiola was a major story in the offseason. And he eventually flipped. The last part of his story was that he flipped from Georgia to Nebraska to go play for Matt Rule. And I believe it was Rivals that his dad was on, Rivals show that his dad was on, Dominic Raiola, who did play for Nebraska, by the way. So if you don't know that part, I do feel like that's a very important piece of this. He played for Nebraska, ended up playing for the Lions, and he comes out with this story on this show with Rivals, talking about his son's recruitment and talk about his son's decision to end up at Nebraska, and talks about how Kirk Herbstreit, who we all know and love, was a major part of that because Kirk picked up the phone and called Dominic, not Dylan, called Dominic, the father, and said, hey, is this true? Are the rumors true? He's thinking about going to Nebraska. He should do it if he can revive that program. I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what the story was. It was that Kirk Herbstreit kind of signed off to Dominic saying this is a good move for him. Of course, this comes out. Georgia fans lose their fucking mind, are saying that they're, Kirk Herbstreit's tampering. Of course, like all the funny headlines are like, he's going to need the Secret Service when he comes back to Athens. And then Kirk Herbstreit comes out and clarifies just a few hours ago and says, like, hey, like I have a personal relationship with Dylan Raiola's father. I didn't call him out of the blue and say, hey, I'm Kirk Herbstreit from College Game Day, ESPN. Here's my opinion. I have a relationship with Dominic. I did say that I thought it was a good idea, but we're making it seem like I was one of the main reasons that he flipped when I just said I thought it was a good idea from a personal standpoint with a personal relationship with his father. Now, whether you buy that or not, Jack, the internet is ablaze with this. And I have so many thoughts, but I want to hear from you guys first.
I don't know. It's just, I see the perspective of Georgia fans, but I also am like, I don't know if I care that much. Like I do because it's a big story, but I mean from the perspective of like, I saw a story that said like ESPN should cut ties from Kirk Herbstreit. I think that's a little outrageous. Also, I understand it's like, but like, he's the number one recruit, right? And Kirk is saying, oh, you should go to Nebraska. So let's look at it from let's say he had like ill intentions with it. All right. So he's saying transfer away from an SEC school, which is going to ESPN this year, to go to a Big Ten school that the ESPN still has some Big Ten, but most of it's Fox and CBS. They actually may have no ESPN. I'm not 100% sure. Also, he's saying, don't go to the SEC, go to the Big Ten where my school is. So it almost is like, well, he almost is doing something that is more so not in his best interests. So why would he? It seems like he was doing something truthfully. And also, from the perspective of college football as a whole, we kind of agreed it's good for the sport that a guy, 5-star, is going to a big-time has-been school, not the classic Georgia, Bama, Ohio State. Also, Dylan Raiola was committed to Ohio State at one point. He decommitted from there. If Kirk Herbstreit was like really trying to be like, don't go there, just go to Ohio State. I don't know. It's just like, I don't know why people are really mad about it. I disagree with the anger.
I do too. And Katie, so Andy Staples, who also we love, who's been on the program. I go on his show, sometimes. I want to say quite often. I wish I went on it more. But Andy Staples, the way he kind of paraphrased it was, he said that Kirk was like talking to him like father to father, right? Like father to father as a personal relationship. Like, hey, this is what I think like is a good thing. And like Katie, I know when you went through the process of schools, I'm sure you talk to your parents about where you should go, and you end up in North Carolina. But it's like, well, yeah, no shit that it's like going to be like, if you have a personal relationship with another father and you're actually going to call, it's almost like he took off his ESPN hat for a second, which he's allowed to do, by the way, which is kind of part of my take. But like, Katie, like, don't you think that it's like just a normal, like, hey, father to father, and then the father gives the son advice? Like, to me, that's a pretty normal thing to happen.
I completely agree. I will say, are we surprised that Georgia fans are acting like this? Like, this chaos is what makes college football great. It's insane. It's dumb, irrational. But where would we be without it? So
1,000%. So here's my thought on it. Do I understand the optics of somebody like Kirk Herbstreit potentially having a hand in recruits' decisions being a problem? Sure. 20 years ago. Now, the way that social media has allowed people to have a real platform and a real opinion, this is what we're asking for people. How many times do you hear, like, I really wish I could hear Kirk Herbstreit's true opinions on how he feels about Michigan, Ohio State, and not just him, just in general. When you look at especially linear TV, you're like, I just want to know what these guys really think, because we know that not only are they fans of the sport, they have so much inside knowledge that they could give their opinion on, even if it's not like outing sources or anything. And also, they're real people with real relationships. If Kirk Herbstreit said, hey, I really like this kid, out of the blue, I'm going to call his father, don't know his father from anybody else, but like, I'm going to call and say, hey, it's Kirk Herbstreit from ESPN College Game Day, heard of me, your son should go to Nebraska. Bigger problem. Like Jack said, hey, I'm Kirk Herbstreit, I played for Ohio State, your son should go to Ohio State. Much bigger problem. This just seems to me like, hey, I have a relationship with this guy's son, the number one recruit, is going to Nebraska. And by the way, we all said the same thing. Like, if you go resurrect a program like Nebraska, you are forever a savior there. Why not go and do it? To me, it feels like, just a lot of overreaction. But if you look at it on paper, then I can understand people saying, maybe it's a problem. It's not. I want this. I want these guys to have their true opinions out there and say, hey, I'm going to pick up the phone. If he called Dylan Raiola, if he called a young kid and was like, you need to go to Nebraska or we're going to talk shit about you on game day, different story. That's not what happened.
Yeah, no, I agree. I get the like you said at the beginning of when you were talking.
My soapbox?
Yeah, no. Like when you said, hey, I understand why this could be a slippery slope if he gets involved, but it's not like he's getting involved in multiple recruits. So, I kind of just like, I see it. And also like from a bad actor point of view, it's almost like he's doing something not to benefit himself. It's out of almost the goodness of his heart. Or just like a true opinion, not to benefit Ohio State or ESPN where he works. So it's just
also,
but it's been Florida State and Georgia both they could come together and like almost tear down Kirk Herbstreit. Like he has all of Knoll Twitter and all of Dog Twitter on him.
Yeah, well, and because he is outspoken on social media, which again goes back to like, platforms in general. It's like now you're not just watching like Walter Cronkite on TV anymore and you don't have access to him. Like, that's not the way of the world anymore, which is why companies like Barstool and people like Dave have been so successful, because you do have access to their real opinions. Now, obviously, ESPN is held to a different standard than Barstool is, but Kirk Herbstreit still has opinions. Like, he's not a robot. So they could probably bring him down. You're right. I think, to be honest, and I'm not throwing shade at all, But to be honest, it feels like to me, like maybe Dominic Raiola just shouldn't have said that. Like, that's my thought, is like, all this happens, like, hey, if it's an actual real, like, personal relationship with you guys, which is what it seems to be if you listen to what Andy Staples said about Kirk Herbstreit, like, you got to have some foresight if you're Dylan Raiola's dad to be like, maybe I shouldn't throw Kirk under the bus here because I know what it's going to look like. That to me is the bigger problem. So if I'm Kirk Herbstreit, I'm going to be like, damn, Dominic, like, that's not what I was trying to do. And you've got me in a lot of shit here. Like, I was just trying to talk to you man to man, father to father, friend to friend about college football. And now I'm getting told to be fired because people think I'm tampering with your son's recruitment. That would piss me off more than anything.
1000%. I would be like, dude, really? Like you
come
really
on,
had
man.
to say that? And I wonder, I wouldn't even be surprised if Dominic Raiola, when he said it, he was like, oh, fuck, I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah.
He
Like,
was
he
like,
probably,
oh, no.
like, it was a little bit of like, you know, I don't want to say clout because I don't believe that he was clout chasing, but it was almost like kind of like solidifying that it was the best decision for Dylan, right? Like, hey, even Kirk Herbstreit said it. And then you're like, so you're kind of putting a stamp of approval from somebody that a lot of people would want a stamp of approval from. And then you're like, oh shit. Like, now this is going to look really bad. If I'm Dominic Raiola or if I'm Dylan, I'm going to come out and be like, they're friends. They have a personal relationship. This is all out of control. Like, I did not make this decision solely because Kirk Herbstreit said it, but you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. So
No,
I
you
personally,
cannot.
I love this kind of stuff. Not because I love that Kirk Herbstreit's getting dragged, because I don't like that at all. I think people that drag people on the internet are bottom feeders. But I love that we're now seeing real personalities coming out from across the board in sports media, because that's what you want to see. Like, I can't imagine being on College Game Day and like not being able to say what I actually think at any given time. So I like this. I think it opens the door. Do I think it would be bad if it's a slippery slope where they say, we'll shit on you for the entire season on game day if you don't pick a school? Obviously, that's a problem. Putting your stamp of approval on going to Nebraska doesn't seem like a problem to me.
No, it does not.
No. Speaking of College Game Day, Nick Saban, but before we do that, Stitch Fix. So shopping is not fun for a lot of people. I know some people are fantastic at shopping. Some people are not. I am not great at it all the time, and I've been using Stitch Fix because I get caught up. And obviously working somewhere like Barstool, you know, we don't have to have a whole lot of like fancy clothes. And after 2020, not a lot of people have like the same old jeans and hoodies, and you kind of use the same thing year after year, which is fine. But Stitch Fix can help you level up your wardrobe. You don't have to spend a whole bunch of money. You can if you want. You don't have to rehaul your whole closet. You can do one drawer if you want. You can do one piece, or you could do a complete rehaul on your wardrobe. And it's an easy way to get clothes that fit you. And you don't have to browse online forever, because it's basically like a style partner. So a lot of, you know, very high-end stores, you go in and you have a shopper and a stylist, and they can help you with this. Stitch fixes this for the internet for a much cheaper price. They have over 1,000 brands and styles, and they do the work for choosing the best options for you and for your body type and what your style is. And they'll even show you what to wear head to toe if that's what you want. So if you're somebody who truly doesn't know what to put together, Stitch Fix can do that, or they can just help you pick out a few staple items. And if you don't love something, this is key, you can send it back, and shippings, returns, and exchanges are always free. So it's a pain in the ass when you go pick out something and you think it's going to look great. You might even try it on and it looks great in the store. You get home, you're like, shit, I don't like this, and have to go back to the store. No, Stitch Fix does it all for you, and it's all completely free. So Stitch Fix, I feel like they could help us all. They get us. That's what they do. They get us. They get our style, and they'll get you too. Try today at stitchfix.com/UR, and you'll get 25% off when you keep everything in your fix. So in whatever you're selecting, whatever that quantity is, if you keep it all, 25% off. That's stitchfix.com/UR, stitchfix.com/UR. All right. Is anybody surprised Nick Saban is on College Game Day?
Kind of.
Really? It
But
didn't surprise me at all. Like, it was like,
yeah, the more
it was cool. Like, it was like, oh shit, that's awesome. But I was like, yeah, no, obviously.
yeah, I mean, I guess maybe I thought he'd maybe take some time away, but he is still like doing pretty well in terms of like why he retired. It was more so the grind of a college football coach is so much.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he was thinking, I'm still pretty healthy, but like I don't know if I can do this. This is top level. Like, I mean, it's it never ends. And but I was a little bit surprised. I thought he'd take a little bit of time off, but maybe he's a guy who just doesn't do well with time off. And I am not surprised from the perspective of ESPN wanting him. I think he's going to be great on camera. He has been before.
Yeah, he's going to be phenomenal. The reason it didn't surprise me was because when we talked about this on our emergency episode when he retired, was that like he seems like, and he's been doing this for so long, that there are certain types of people, not just in this profession, but it's like if you're used to doing something for so long and working so hard, to be able to like flip a switch and just not do anything is probably very difficult. And like you see a lot of times with professional athletes, like they come out and they talk about it, like losing that quote identity when they've retired and they're trying to figure out if they go into coaching or not. Nick Saban does not seem like the guy that's like, you know what's going to be great? I'm just going to immediately go sit on a beach every single day and be happy. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. If that's what he chose to do, more power to him. But to me, it's like he's probably thinking like, okay, I don't want to do the year-round grind. I don't want to have to deal with transfer portals and NIL bullshit and all that. And we'll talk about what NIL is doing to coaching, because obviously Jeff Hafley leaving Boston College basically said NIL is a massive problem. But Nick Saban basically being like, yeah, I still want to work, but I just don't want to work as much, and I don't want to do that anymore, but I'm going to be really wanted, and you strike when the iron's hot. The iron's always going to be hot with Nick Saban, don't get me wrong, but like the year after you retire and you're going to let the leash off and let him actually say a little bit more of what he's thinking, like this is the time to do it.
1,000%. And
I love it.
Yeah.
Do you think he's going to actually say what he's thinking, though, a lot? Like, I think he'll do more, but like, it goes back to what we were saying about Kirk. Like, he is at ESPN. Like, they said what? He'll be obviously on game day. He'll be on some other, like, draft day kind of things. We've seen him do it when as a coach, like when he was like campaigning for them to be in the playoff a couple years ago. But I kind of wonder if he's going to be like, Dan Mullen has done a good job of kind of teetering that line of like saying what he thinks without saying too much for ESPN to get mad. Like Nick Saban has a longer leash than Dan Mullen.
Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. Like, what if Alabama has a tough go at it?
Right. See, this is the kind of stuff. Like, let these men say what they want. That's what I want. Like, listen. Linear TV, phenomenal. Obviously, like when it started and what it did for the sports industry, and like waking up in the morning and having to watch SportsCenter and the top 10 to figure out what happened. Great. Let's move past that. Let these guys say what they want. Now, I'm not saying to let Nick Saban get up there and like, drop a million like F-bombs. Like, I'm not saying that. That's what we do here at Barstool Sports. They can be more professional. I'm saying like, I actually want to hear what these guys are saying. And if Alabama fails or isn't as good as they were, I would love to hear his actual thoughts on why he thinks that's happening. Now, I don't expect him to be like, because I'm not there anymore, even though we know that's the issue. But like, I want to hear their real thoughts. I want to hear, like, when he got mad at Maria Taylor and so many people freaked out, like, yeah, like obviously him like losing his temper on a sideline reporter is not ideal. I'd rather hear that 10 out of 10 than some bullshit coach speak. Same thing when Richard Sherman did it to Aaron Andrews. Like, that's the kind of stuff as a fan I want to see.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I mean, it's like one of the most viral clips of the past few years in college football. It's amazing. It was funny, and
great.
Hopefully, he'll be able to show his like personality. And I mean, I want him to.
Can you imagine if he ever picked against Alabama?
That would also be like, will they ask him to pick?
They
Does
should.
Does he understand how like betting works? Like, there's another thing. I mean, obviously ESPN
like, Katie's like, of course they do. Okay, like again, like people that are listening don't get like Katie's facial expressions are low key one of the best parts of this podcast.
If you are a head coach in the SEC, or let alone a head coach, whether it's very on purpose or not, you know the spread, you know the total, because your boosters are betting on you. I don't think you're gonna like do anything completely out of. Wasn't it Georgia Tech, like Notre Dame, or someone this year, 2 years ago, like very clearly trying to hit the spread? College coaches know the spread.
It's always James Franklin. James Franklin always fucking, and he fucks me. Pause, but he fucks me. Like, it's always that. The Northwestern game was disgusting. I'll never forgive James Franklin for that.
No,
I remember it. I can see it.
And
I can see it happening.
That way, like if you feel that way about it, there's somebody that's close enough to James Franklin that also feels that way. And like his buddies let him know. Like that, again, that's the thing here. Like even if Nick Saban himself has nothing to do with gambling, has no knowledge of himself gambling, that his buddies, his golf buddies, his beach buddies, his fishing buddies, they're all gambling on Alabama football. So he is very aware of what's happening. But even if they put him up on game day and they said, hey, like, you think Alabama can beat Georgia today? And he said, oh, I don't know. Like, that's phenomenal entertainment to me. I don't think he would ever do that, but like, he might.
What do you think would happen? Because clearly when you're Alabama, like when was the last time like Nick Saban had an uprising against him? Like right now we're seeing with Kirk Herbstreit in Florida State. Do you think there is something besides him picking against Alabama, doing something anti-Alabama related? Do you think there's something he can say that is polarizing enough that's reasonable that someone, like not like a dumb thing on the internet, like do you think that we'll get the internet like Nick Saban's an idiot, Nick Saban doesn't know ball? Like he's got to be untouchable, right? With all of his opinions?
Pretty close to untouchable. Like, and like you said, like within reason, obviously, like, but
No. That's a really good question from Katie.
phenomenal.
Like, what will be a Nick Saban moment? Like, what happens if he doesn't know ball about something? Like, will people attack him?
I mean, let's be honest here.
No, I'm serious. It's possible. Like,
it is possible, but like the greatest, again, maybe we're just like mentally programmed because of how good he's been for the last 2 decades. But like, I have a hard time thinking that there's any question that could be thrown at him as the greatest coach of all time in college football that he wouldn't have. And even if somehow he didn't know the exact answer to, that he could talk his way into sounding like he knows the exact answer to.
But like, what if like he just doesn't know about a Pac-12 team?
Yeah, I guess that's true. But then you get well, of course he doesn't know. He just spent 2 decades building one of the greatest dynasties in sports history.
That is true. But like, will he ever get into like the Florida State? Like, let's say he's like, of course Florida State's not going to get in. Like, will the fans be mad at? Like, it's possible.
It is possible. And I mean, to answer Katie's question, like the last time that he even had like a little bit of an uprising, that I brought it up earlier, but like when he went on a couple of years ago and they had him on like what seemed like a campaign trail to try to get Alabama into the playoff, and they had 2 losses that year as well. That to me was probably the closest, outside of the people that get mad at when he talks to reporters or sideline reporters, like when he talks down to them, again, that's in air quotes. That moment was probably the closest I can think of that people were like, what the fuck is Nick Saban doing? But people understood why, because it's like, well, of course he's going to try to campaign to get his own team in. Like, why would he not? And speaking of full circle, he actually brought up gambling in that speech. Remember? He was like, we would be favored on a neutral field against those teams. So there it is. Like, so we do know that he knows gambling. It's that he tried to use Vegas odds as an argument to get them in the playoff.
That is true. He did. That did happen.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting. Like there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things from the college, like from the game day perspective, that makes the hire interesting, because it's like we know a lot about Nick Saban, but I mean, I wonder how much they paid him, because this is a big get for them. And it's almost like, is McAfee on the show anymore?
It's still like, if you look at the press release, it says that he is.
Okay, so he's in the press release. I know McAfee kind of was saying like, I don't know if I want to do it.
Well, there's also a lot changing too, and this is kind of like the inner workings of behind the scenes. And I can't pretend to know all of it, but there's also like a lot of things are changing with the college football playoff expansion, because they're still waiting to see TV rights and who gets what package, because you're going from having 3 total games to obviously many more than that. So I'm assuming that this offseason, we're going to see a lot of announcements from these major networks on who is going where. But like kind of like Tom Brady going to Fox, which I obviously hand up love. Like regardless of if you're Tom Brady, you're Bill Belichick, you're Nick Saban, go of like the greatest, like Michael Jordan, if he was sitting on NBA on TNT, when you're the greatest at what you've done and you've built up that reputation, I want to hear what you have to say. You might not have the best charisma in the world. I guess we'll see. But like, he is so knowledgeable and so important to the sport that Nick Saban can say and do what he wants, in my opinion, and I'm going to be tuning in. Like, I know, like, Tony Romo, like, people loved him at first and now fucking hate him. Tony Romo doesn't have the clout in the NFL history books to be a buffoon like he is. If Nick Saban is a buffoon, he's still Nick Saban.
No, yeah, that's true. And I think we do know he has the charisma because, I mean,
Right.
he's done so much recruiting. And then also, like, I mean, we've seen him. Like, he's, like, entertaining. Like, I mean, he just is. And so I'm excited to see, but I mean, like, I don't want to pump it up too much because, like, there's another college football show we obviously like better, but but hopefully there'll be some moments we'll be able to talk about, like, and we'll watch on replay.
Here's the thing. I want Nick Saban's social moments. That's what I want. Like, I want to get on Twitter and I want to be, or X or whatever people want to call it. And I want to be able to see Nick Saban's picks. And also the Barstool College Football Show is not usually going up till noon kickoff. It's a much shorter show.
Yeah, no, that is true.
So tuning into, and I'm not a big College Game Day fan anymore. Like, I think that they're all very good. I think that it's kind of a staler show than it used to be, that's not just because I work at Barstool, just in general. But I love tuning into at the end of the show when they do all their picks. And obviously, feel about how you do about Lee Corso. The man is a legend, whatever. I would love to see Nick Saban actually have to pick every single game on the schedule. Like, that to me is going to be very interesting. I don't know what they're going to do and like how much they're going to use him, because it seems that like the 4 guys and the 5 guys are going to stay there, but it'll be interesting to see how they use him.
Yeah, no, yeah. And will he be on it? Because sometimes the show's like 3 hours. Like, will he be on set for 3 hours or just the last hour?
Yeah. And some, in the past, and I'm not going to pretend to know, like in the past, like, I don't know if they still do this, but in the past, like the first hour from like 9 to 10 a.m. is like a different cast, and it's more a little bit low key. And then from 10 to noon, right before kickoff, it's the main guys with, the different people that are outside on the different sets. And, obviously in the past, Aaron Andrews and, Maria Taylor and that. So we'll see what it looks like. I love it. I'm all for legends being in the booth, legends being at the desk. Like, the fact that we're getting Nick Saban at a College Game Day desk and Tom Brady in a Fox NFL booth in the same year is like, that's like a wet dream for me. That sounded creepy. Pause. I didn't mean for that to sound as creepy as it did.
Yeah, no, that did sound a little.
I didn't mean for it to be so creepy.
Especially when I mean, Nick, he's just a little bit older. He's just a little.
I didn't mean it to sound like a legitimate,
like football. You're football. Like, it's a football dream.
It's like when, like Sunday night football porn is something that I used to say about Tom Brady, which is a double entendre, like multiple meanings. But I did not mean it to sound that way with Nick Saban. All due respect to Miss Terry. I do not want to upset Miss Terry.
Do you think Nick Saban, if he is picking, will be a good picker? Because, like, it depends how much research, but he obviously knows the game. Like, could he be one of the best pickers of all time if he's on top of it?
Well, that's where it goes back to what Jack was saying. Like,
I guarantee, I'll say it right now, clip it. I guarantee I'm a better college football gambler than Nick Saban. 1,000%.
Love that. That would make sense, though. And I know that people are going to be like,
yeah,
Jack versus like Nick Saban. But here's the thing. When you are a college football coach, especially for the length of time that he has been and so good, like, you're not paying attention to gambling on an entire slate of games. Like, you're not putting your board together every Saturday. You know who has been doing that? Jack Mack. Mack has been putting his board together for many years.
And I don't even think, and I don't even think that's like really supposed to be insult. Like, he's just never done it. He's never done it.
I mean, that's the whole thing. It's like when you see, like, Bussin' with the Boys, these guys are fucking killing it now. But like they even talk about like the fact that they're now like on the opposite side. They're now like in the fan seats. Like, they were players and now they're seeing how podcasting and media works. And they're like, my God, this is a different world. Nick Saban's about to deal with that. Nick Saban's going to be in the trenches gambling. He probably won't be, but I'd like to picture him getting off of set on whatever, wherever they are on location, getting on his private plane, going back to Tuscaloosa with Miss Terry or wherever their beach house is, and just sweating out bullets all day. That's what I want from Nick Saban. I want it so bad.
It's possible.
All right. Before we get out of here, one more shout out to Rocket Money. Again, I feel like when they curate all the ads in this podcast, they're like, what is Kayce like and what does Kayce use? Let's put it out there. And people always think I'm making it up. I am not. Rocket Money is one of those that I've had on my phone forever. I was very excited when they came on board because I am somebody who gets caught in unwanted subscriptions all the time because I get suckered in like, hey, 7-day free trial for this, sign up. And I always forget to unsign up. And Rocket Money has helped me along the way. And I wish I had a new example to tell you, but I don't because Rocket Money's been doing it for me for so long. So they help you cancel your unwanted subscriptions. If you go to rocketmoney.com/rough, and it's not just that, it's a great way to look at your budgeting, to look at what you're spending. They have this really cool feature that I love where it takes like what money you have in your bank account and then it goes everything that goes against that and then tells you what you actually have, because I think that sometimes it's hard to do math on, especially if you have a lot of different credit cards or a lot of different loans. Like it's like, here's the actual cash you have available and then here's what you really have available once you have all your debt put together. So like on any random month you can go look and you can say, hey, like I have X amount that I need to pay off my credit card in order to get that back to even. So the biggest thing though, these unwanted subscriptions, they can do it. Not only do they tell you that you're paying X amount of money for something you've not used in months, they can actually cancel it for you. You just put in the information right in that app. They can do it. So again, cancel your unwanted subscriptions by going to rocketmoney.com/rough and just be better with your money. Like that, it truly is an app that is just helping you be better with your money. And in 2024, in this economy, you need Rocket Money. Just very quickly, Jack, I know that it was obviously very hot in the streets last week. We did not have an episode last week, but Jeff Hafley leaving Boston College to go be the defensive coordinator in Green Bay for the Packers. And just in general, when coaches move from college to the NFL, you say things like, well, he probably didn't want to deal with recruiting anymore. He probably didn't want to be in high school recruiting or high school recruits' living rooms, and he didn't want to have to deal with all this. Now we've said with the added element of everything, and Pete Thamel came out and said, this was a tweet that he had, he wants to go coach again in a league that is all about football, a source told ESPN. College coaching has become fundraising, NIL, and recruiting your own team and transfers. There's no time to coach football anymore. So a lot of people saw this and said, well, what do they think the NFL is? Completely a different planet of what these guys have to do in the NFL versus college. Did it surprise you that it seems like he was so bold with why he's leaving?
No. So I think at first people kind of used it in the college football world as a talking point. Mm-hmm. We're in this time period and we know it. Like, how many podcasts have we done in the off season when we're like, what are we going to talk about? Yeah. Like, what are we going to talk about this week? And it's not because we don't want to do the show. It's just like, man, we have to like get creative and like, that's our job. But it's like, we'll come up with things. And I think that happens a lot. And then people get into this kind of spear of like, okay, we've always like, there's been a billion moves in the college football world that have been looked at like, this is the end of college football.
Right.
Now, the transfer portal NIL is kind of the biggest of that. Not that it's the end, but the biggest change. And here's the thing. Things change all the time, though. I also think Jeff Hafley, and I'm just going to, or Jeff, I'm just, if I recall correctly, Jeff Hafley, like he's a guy, yes, and I was right about this, that spent 2012 to 2018 in the NFL world. Mm-hmm. He followed Greg Schiano when Greg Schiano went to the Bucs. It's possible he just likes the NFL better. And he saw this opportunity arise and say, hey, I just want to go back to the NFL. Maybe he doesn't like college football. Like, and so like with the world, and there's a report, I think in the Senior Bowl, somebody kind of went off of the Pete Thamel quote, and they asked a bunch of the college football guys there and NFL guys there, it's like, what do you think about this move for Jeff Hafley? And a lot of them just said, we think he just wanted to get back in the NFL. Which, like, I mean, okay. Right. You're kind of a scumbag for doing it when you did it. You kind of fucked over a lot of kids, but like, I get it. Business is business. This is a tough industry. And when something comes open, sometimes you gotta you got to jump at it. That's my overall feeling. Like I usually think, I mean, there are some, like, I've always thought like people have always freaked out about like things happening in the world and said that the world is falling apart. They said about the TV, they said about the internet, they said about phones. Now they're saying about the Apple Vision Pros. I will say we are getting to a point in society where it's like that the Apple Vision Pro is kind of crazy, but
Katie, are you going to get one of those?
Think I can afford that? Oh.
Well, okay. Let's say somebody gifted it to you. Would you? I feel like Katie would know how to use one of those things so fucking fast.
I think it's gonna fuck like our brains. Like at some point, our brains are gonna be like, "This ain't what you want to be doing."
I struggle to watch a TV show and not be on my phone. I can't even be off of it. Like the ADD of the world, just screwed.
It's a disaster.
I would use it. I would not be caught dead in public with it.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. For sure. I'm like worried like for my 1-year-old son. Like by the way, he turns 1 on Saturday, which is
that's crazy.
Like that's crazy. But like the idea that like when he's in his recruitment for college football, because that's what he's gonna be doing, shout out Texas A&M, he's gonna be using like the Apple Vision Pros or whatever are gonna be like a relic. They're gonna be like fax machines in National Signing Day. It's crazy.
The Apple Vision Pros, by the time your son is going to college, like who knows what, like hopefully we will all be alive and whatnot.
I do hope that, yes.
No, I'm just saying it. I
do hope I'm alive when my son goes to college. Yes.
Yes, me too. And I hope, and I'm planning on it too.
Yes.
But that is not to say I have a child coming. I do not. But
not my son. It's
your child, but I'm like I do want to have children one day and put them. I mean, I don't know if they'll go to college. Who knows what college will be at?
Oh yeah, no, that's a bigger piece here. Like that's a whole nother rabbit hole you get on. Like, is college even going to be a thing then? I don't know.
Yeah, who even knows? But that goes to my whole point here. It's like people freak out about things, and there are like, I think the people that scream that what's that movie, Katie? That the chicken cry, like the
sky is falling.
Yeah, with the chicken, like chicken, or yeah, like chicken the people Little. That say that. What?
Chicken Little.
Chicken Little.
Duh.
They do have a point, to a degree with the transfer portal and NIL. The only thing is, it's like, does Carson Beck deserve a $270,000 Lamborghini? Yeah. Like, yeah, he does. Like, it's just, and it's like, should he not get that? No, like, if he wants to get it, that's his decision. And if Georgia wants to assist in him getting that, it's his decision. But I get why. Here's the thing: college coaches had it really easy, man. Like, it was like these kids had no money. The only thing that they could get money is if they get to the NFL. And if they don't listen to the coach, you're a bum. You're gone. Now it's like they have to compete against other things. Like, sorry, your job got harder. Like, it's like when a journalist, like Kayce, to use you as an example, like you started as a sideline reporter and you evolved because the media evolved.
Mm-hmm.
Your job got harder. You weren't like, oh, fuck this, I'm going to be an accountant. Like, nothing against accountants. No, but it's just like you could have done that, and that would have been fine. And I'm sure you would have been a great accountant. But
definitely not. Horrible.
But I'm just using it as an example. It's like, I don't really feel bad for the coaches. It's like, yeah, it's a different game now.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, and it's just like the evolution of the sport. And like, obviously coaches that coached in the 70s and 80s probably wouldn't have want to deal with what you had to deal with in the early 2000s. And then coaches that didn't want to see a playoff. Like, and I understand this is a much bigger issue because it is having to recruit your own team year round, 365 days a year. You are not only having to recruit to build your roster for the future, you're also currently recruiting your current guys because you want to keep them happy and keep them on the staff. That must suck for people. That's just the way of life. And so, you know, whether Carson Beck deserves a Lamborghini or not, that's just the way of the world. And like that to me is just basically saying like, hey, we've been saying for a long time that college football, especially, but college sports, basketball, obviously baseball, much more, is a business. People like me, I wrote my thesis paper in college about paying athletes, and that was a lot longer ago than I care to admit, because this is a business that has been making hundreds of millions and billions of dollars. And now we're seeing it catch up with these athletes. unfortunately, these coaches are going to have to evolve, or they're going to have to give up their $10 million a year paychecks. That's just the way of the world. Like, telling a coach in 1970 that you could make $10 million a year if you coached in a few decades, like, they'd be like, yeah, fucking right. Well, that's where they are. So now that's just the way of the world. So I agree. I think pictures like Carson Beck with a Lamborghini are fucking hilarious. I think guys getting mustard named after them is fucking hilarious. If you don't like it, like, unfortunately, that's just the way. So, you have to evolve and adapt or die.
And guess what? If you don't evolve, somebody will be there to take your job. Now, there's that clip of Michael Irvin talking about, like, we're losing recipes. Like, the women these days, like, don't like to cook. It's like, we're losing recipes, like, whatnot. Could we end up losing some good coaches? It's possible. It's
Absolutely.
possible. I'm not 100% sure. It's possible.
Well, I mean, think about it this way. And, like, we obviously will never know this answer, nor do I expect to ever know this answer. But if the world wasn't the way that it's going in college football, would Nick Saban have decided to retire this year? Like, would he have said, hey, like, I'd kind of like to stick around and be, win another one, or like see what my opportunities could be? I personally believe that he probably would have stayed but like the headache of
70.
He is.
He is 72, though.
Like, the man could have retired years ago and we'd be like, yeah, he's the greatest of all time. But there is also an element that probably speeds up that process. Like, hey, like, I don't really want to have to deal with this shit for one more year. It's evolving too quickly and I don't have to. I can go retire and be on College Game Day. But if it was just like, hey, I can go sit in a college, or a high school guy's living room and recruit him, and I'm the best at doing that, I might stick around and try to win one more. It's not the case anymore.
Yeah, no. I mean, you're right. Like, I agree. The only reason I say
if you
72.
hit him with truth serum, if you really hit Nick Saban with truth serum, I believe there would be some sort of variation of that. Like, hey, like, I just didn't want to deal with having to evolve. Like, I've evolved.
That would be interesting to see, like, if he ever talks about, like, that on game day. That's another thing. Like, they talk about all college football topics. So
imagine he did. Imagine he just came out like week 1 and just says, like, yeah, I didn't want to deal with this NIL bullshit. I'd be like, keep this man forever.
Yes. Well.
All right. That's an episode.
Good show.
That's an episode. So I assume we will be back next week because we do have ads, and Brandon will be here. We will make sure Brandon is here. He is trying to win the dozen currently. But this was a really fun episode. I enjoyed it.
We did an hour 2.
There you go.
And it felt like nothing. I mean, we got all the ads in, and shout out to everyone that's watching. And
subscribe, comment.
Subscribe. We're on Rumble now. If you want to watch over there, that we have been on there, but like, if you're listening and whatnot, you want to check us out on Rumble, please do.
Yep. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back next week. If you're a Taylor Swift fan, I'm assuming you are hoping the Kansas City Chiefs win the Super Bowl. I don't know, but enjoy the Super Bowl. Grab some high noons, some Chomps, some HelloFresh, whatever, and we will see you next week.